Okay, so this story actually has a title which is called The Only Roommate I Ever Dumped Was the Poet. And this goes back to when I was an undergraduate. I was an old undergraduate. I started when I was 27 years old. And as a result, they put me in graduate student housing instead of a dormitory, which means that we had a door that opened onto the street, 2 bedrooms and a bath. They also assigned roommates. So the first roommate that they assigned me was this born-again guy from Korea. And he moved out very fast because he realized that I wasn't lying to him about being gay. And the way he figured that out was he told me he'd seen the nudie pictures on the wall in the living room. I couldn't figure out what he was talking about. It turns out it was a print of a painting by Rodin. Goodbye, Korean boy. And then the next guy showed up. I described him as the kid with the silver spoon in his mouth. He really seemed to believe that I was the butler. And he was talking always about the proletariat. And his big thing was that he was extremely proud of the fact that he was going to a public university because after all, he really didn't have to. And unfortunately, he flunked out in about a month. So then I got the third roommate. The third roommate, I really liked. This was a guy who was an actor and a bodybuilder, and he was really great eye candy. Except the thing is, this guy had a face that could scare cats. I mean, it was cadaverous. The problem was he had some kind of disease that made it impossible for him to hold any fat in his skin. So as a result, he looked like a walking skeleton. And at night, this was very, very frightening. If you got out the bottom out, and you saw this Frankenstein, incredible, built like a rich shithouse part of my English, walking around. And he actually went on to take this particular set of talents and have a career as a big movie villain. And got beat up by Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone. And he also gets to play aliens a whole lot because he could be a Klingon without makeup. And that means he can pick up extra gigs like signing posters at science fiction conventions. But the roommate I want to tell you about is a guy named Scott. Scott was the poet. And Scott was a really sensitive guy. He was a sweet guy. He was an MFA poet and he was stoned all the time. And mostly easy to get along with. But he had this habit of trying to create poetic atmosphere around him. Like right after he moved in, the first thing he did was he went out to the local marshes and he came back with a bag full of owl balls. I mean the things like cat balls, like fur balls, that the owls throw up after they well, I didn't want to get the wrong idea. The owls throw up and they have these little piles of fur with rat bones and owl digestive juices. It was disgusting, and he'd take these things, he'd lay them out on the kitchen table and stare at them so he could write his poems. And, I could appreciate a memento mori, but when I sat down to eat dinner, this was disgusting. I really didn't like it. But I learned to tolerate it. But the final straw was the day that he decided that he wanted to raise escargot. Because we had a whole lot of these fields outside as a graduate student in public garden. So he collected a bunch of them and he stuck them into a container with a bunch of lettuce because the idea was you would feed them for a week on the lettuce and that would get rid of all their poisons. They would dump it all out and then it'd be okay to fry up and have an escargot feast. Well, this was a great idea, except this was, like I said, he was a sensitive guy, so with an entire week to feed these things, of course he formed relationships. By the end of the week, they had names. There was Walt and Emily and Oscar, and the slowest was Alfred Lord Tennyson, and he could identify each of these. So when it came down to eat them, he realized that he didn't have the heart to fry up Oscar. So he took the escargot and he dumped them down the garbage disposal. And then, of course, he realized, hey, wait a minute, that may not be the safest place for them. So he came to me in stone desperation and pleaded with me, don't turn on the garbage disposal for at least a day. The snails are down there. You got to give them time to escape to the garden. Don't you know? Are you seeing where this is going? The next morning, blurry-eyed, I get up and I walk into the kitchen, and there is this slimy parade. They are slowly marching out of the garbage disposal, across the sink, across the counter where I make my toast, down the cabinet, sliming the drawer where I get my silverware, and across the floor, a whole parade of them, Oscar and Emily and Walt, all of them, headed for the door. I open the after when I watch these things,
1 minute.
slime their way out the door. And I can promise you, the punchline of the story, of course, is that I made damn certain that Scott followed them as quickly as possible. And that is the story of the poet and the escort.